everybody! Happy New Year! Welcome back to Rework It. Nice to see everybody. And I'm here with Jesús Ramirez. Jesús, thank you so much for
Kladi,
joining
hey everybody.
us.
Thank you so much for joining us.
And we can see Sean Kosel, so many wonderful people in the chat. Nadia, RB, Sam Peterson, how's it going? Nice to see you. Fantastic. Dan, Golden Rose, nice to see everybody. Felice Ano Nuevo, Steve, nice to see you. Carol Perl, Andreas Holler. I want to say hi to everybody. And if you're watching us from YouTube, make sure to head on behance.net/live in order to participate live and to chat with us. So we'll be able to read the chat directly on Behance. If you don't know what Rework It is about, so first of all, good morning, because I know that it's pretty early in that side of the world, in the eastern side of the world, western side of the world.
Western.
It's morning in the western side of the world and it's evening in the eastern one. So first and foremost, let us know where you're watching from. Right now, we both are in Manchester, UK. As you can see, we are in the same location.
Yeah. Not a virtual high five this time.
That's a real high five. Fantastic. So I can see in the chat, Malini, I can just say, go and check out your email because I just see something coming through.
You see RB's comment?
No, let me go ahead and see. Bruce Lee, ready to tackle 2021 for sure. Okay, let me zip it up. Fantastic. But also got a little rainbow here, so it's a peaceful martial art. Right, great. But before we get started, Jesus, why don't you show us how everyone can submit their artwork, because Rework It is all about you. Me and Jesus are here to share tips and techniques in Illustrator, InDesign, and Photoshop. We're probably going to jump into a little After Effects this year because I'm also sharpening my skills and my techniques. So let us know if you want to, Jesus, how do we take part to Rework It?
Yeah, so switch over to my screen.
Yes.
Awesome. Cool. So this is the website where you can submit your work. It's at iamkladi.com/reworkit, iamkladi.com/reworkit. And from this page, you'll see this button that reads Submit Your Design. You can click on that and it'll bring up this window. And all you have to do is fill in your email and information and submit the file. Illustrator files, Photoshop files, InDesign files, Rush, Premiere Pro, and Adobe Stock. I'm sorry, which apps you have used? I'm like, wait a minute, we're doing all those? No, we're only doing Illustrator, Photoshop, InDesign, and let us know what apps you've used, because you might have used more than those to create your work. So make sure that you submit that and ask us any specific questions. Click on the submit button and we'll receive the file, and hopefully you can be featured in one of the reworkits. We have another one coming up tomorrow, and then we have 2 more in January, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, we're going to publish on our social media a full schedule event, so you know when you get your page ready, because of course we're here to rework it. We're learning together. And as I always say, Adobe Live is a safe space where we can all have fun, learn new techniques using the amazing Adobe apps, and we learn from each other. So it's not necessarily something that a problem to solve, although it could be, but it can be just simply having a different eye or a different take, different direction for a project. So, or simply show off. Why not? We work so hard, we work day and night in our project, we definitely know the feeling. So we are more than happy to show off your Behance page, maybe your social media if that's what you want, and for sure your work. So we're gonna be starting in Photoshop, and I'm just gonna, sorry sis, before we jump into Photoshop, I just wanna say we have a ton of Photoshop file that we're going through, although of course, please keep submitting Photoshop file, but we also would love to see more InDesign and Illustrator. And it can be a cover art, an illustration, a logo, a sketch that you wanna vectorize, anything. But just make sure that you keep those Illustrator and InDesign coming, because we have a vast majority of Photoshop, and we just want to make sure that we cover both apps. Yes. Ferry Utuomo in the chat. Also, my dad is in the chat. Join back from Italy. Ciao, Guido. Ciao, Papa. Thank you so much.
Your mom's in the chat, too.
Oh, as usual. So we have the Adobe Live family and the Kladi family are now an item for sure. Fantastic. But yeah, let's jump into Photoshop.
Before Photoshop, we got to jump into behance.net.
Oh, yes.
And show the artist for today. This is Achilles Argyriou. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Achilles is from Cyprus, and the file that he submitted is this one here, which is the one we're going to work on today, and it's a hot air balloon on top of this ocean with the moon behind it. So why don't we jump right into that? And Steve is right; it's all in the family. Referring to your parents there, Kladi. Yeah. So this is the file that Achilles sent in, and it looks fantastic. And I'm just going to disable all the layers so you can see the files that he has here. And if you look, they have a background layer, which is essentially the hot air balloon with the water and the sky and the moon. And they went on to add a larger moon in front of, or behind rather, the ocean. And they removed the tiny little moon that was up here, added a few more stars, and we have a checked layers folder. So there's a couple things here that I want to talk about. There's a lot of things that were done right, but I think that there were a lot of things done right sort of like in as a reflex, meaning, oh, I always do this, so I'm just going to do this here too without it making too much sense. So maybe there's something.
RB is saying problems with the horizon line.
Again, problems with the horizon line. Yeah, that's actually a big problem in a lot of composites. But even before we get to that point, if you notice, the first thing that comes to mind is I'm not really sure why he's working on a 16-bit image. You can see that this is an RGB 16-bit image. The original photo, it would make sense if maybe they were working with they're a photographer and maybe they brought in like a 16-bit image into Photoshop and started working with it. But from the looks of it, if you double click on the smart object, it opens up this image here, and it's just a regular JPEG. So I'm not really sure. Actually, that was not the file that I was trying to show you. There's a couple of different smart objects. This one here, the original background, if you double click on it, you'll notice that it's just a regular JPEG from Pexels, and it's an RGB 8 image. So I'm not sure why they converted that 8-bit image into 16-bit. So I would have just left it at 16 or 8 bits, since I don't see the advantage of having a 16-bit image besides creating a larger file size if the original file is 8 bits to begin with, and it's a JPEG image as well, so it's a compressed photo. So I would have not done that. I would have kept it at 8 bits. Also, it looks like the way they imported the file into the 16-bit document is by placing it in there, which left this as a JPEG as opposed to bringing it in and then converting it into a smart object. Because notice now that if I want to edit this smart object, for example, just simply creating a new layer, and I try to close it and save it, Photoshop wants to save an extra file, an external file that wouldn't be the smart object. So I can't really work with this with this smart object as I would with any other smart object. So there's a couple things in there that I'm not sure why they did it to begin with, but it is what it is. This is what we have. So in other words, what I would have done is I would have brought that file in. Doesn't matter how you bring it into Photoshop, but once it's in Photoshop, you could have either rasterized it, or if it was like a linked smart object or like a cloud document, you can right click on it again and then convert that into a smart object. That way, when you double click on it, you can create a new layer and make your design and close it and save it, and that is actually saved within your working document. You don't have to save an external file that wouldn't even be brought into your working document the way that they brought it in. So those two things, I'm not sure why they did, but like I said, it is what it is.
Susan, I'm going to interrupt you a second, sorry, but Mel de Mello is saying, oh, I love some basics. Thank you for touching on this. A self-taught Photoshopper with attention deficit disorder, this is helpful. So I think that, that's why I always say that's a safe space to go and really dig into the basics of compositing. So thank you so much, and keep those amazing tips coming, because they're always very useful. It's always good to build solid foundation for any project.
So that was one of the issues, the way that the file was brought in, and the creation of a 16-bit document without any real reason to, besides blowing up the file size. And also, you don't have access to all the Photoshop tools in 16-bit as you do with 8-bit. So another reason why only go to 16-bit if you really need to. But the next issue that I saw here is that he created these check layers, which is great. I love people that create check layers because and actually I'm already seeing something here. Let me just press the F12 key to make sure that I'm looking at the file as they sent it to me, not as I was, clicking and opening on things, to make sure that we're really looking at what they sent in. So with the check layers, you can see that they have a hue check layer, which is great. And I've done it in previous reworkits. If you haven't seen them, you can go watch in the other ones. On my YouTube channel, Photoshop training channel, I talk about check layers. This is a color ambient check layer to check for the hue. And basically what they're doing is making sure that the hue of the entire composite matches. Great job there. They have a saturation check layer to make sure that the levels of saturation are all there. Again, in my YouTube channel, I have a video on making saturation maps. This is what this is, and it's fantastic. They have a luminance check layer to check the brightness. They created this by taking a white solid and changing it to color. That works fine. Some people like using a black and white adjustment layer. That works great. Sometimes I like to use a Vibrance adjustment layer and decrease the saturation. That works great as well. So there's different ways of doing this. So that using the solid color balance adjustment layer is not bad. It's just not the way that I do it, but it's fine. And then they have this really interesting one called a solar curve. And what a solar curve creates is this weird looking thing, and it's meant to find imperfections on an image. So for example, if this were a portrait, you can create one of these solar flares, and it's basically a solar curve. A solar flare is from Dragon Ball, I believe. But or isn't that a power move in Dragon Ball? Somebody in the chat will let me know. But the solar curve, it's just a regular curve, and then you just add these points to create this W-looking curve, and it makes your image look like that. So if you're working with a portrait, it might help you better see skin irregularities or blemishes, or maybe like camera dust particles that were in the lens, or the little small details that are difficult to spot with the bare eye. So he used one of these curves to see the things that were not right in the composite, but I don't think that he really used it because he would have noticed that some things are not were not done correctly. For example, I don't know if you guys have noticed already, but right here on the top left here, we have a lot of irregularities. Well, why are we getting those irregularities? Actually, before I show you why, let me create another curves adjustment layer. And this is the one step that I don't think he took, which is, yeah, create the solar curve, but not a solar curve is not gonna be perfect for every image. So yeah, create your solar curve, and then below that, create another curve. And what you can do is click and drag on that curve to adjust it. And notice that as I adjust this curve, you're gonna start seeing these little weird blotches here. You see that? These blotches on the top left? As I adjust the curve, they become more obvious. Well, the reason that those blotches are happening, and the reason why he created the solar curve to begin with, was to notice things like that. The reason that we're getting these blotches is because he decided to do a healing layer on top of everything that just doesn't match. See that? See that when I remove that? Mm-hmm. You can see that the moon there was covered. I would have not done it that way. Notice that he added the healing brush tool above everything else. In other words, when you're healing, you're capturing the adjustments that the adjustment layer created and painting that on that blank layer. So I wouldn't have done it that way. Also, notice that the way that he's making these adjustments, he's creating these this banding effect. If you're gonna create that, then you have to follow it through so that the image at least doesn't look like it's cut and pasted and you get those blotches. So a couple ways to fix it. Number one is, instead of creating this healing layer on top of everything, I would have disabled all the effects, all these layers that are creating the effect that he's trying to make there. So basically everything in green. So click and drag on the eye icon and you can disable everything and only enable the background here, right? And right above that, you can create a blank layer, and then you can make your adjustments in here. And then when you apply the layers and adjustments and all of that, they'll be applied to the layer that you created. Also, the way that I would have done this would have not even been using that technique. What I would have done, just to keep the same level of banding, even though the banding in my opinion doesn't work, but it is what it is. That's what we have in this image, and that's what we're going to work with. So to keep that same haloing effect, what I would have done is I would have just copied half of the image like so, right about the center. Then press Control J on Windows, Command J on the Mac to duplicate, Control T, Command T to transform, right click and select flip horizontal, and then just place that on the other side where these lines match more or less. And let me disable and enable the layer to make sure that they do. And you know what, maybe I have to bring it down a little bit. It's not like a perfect circle, but something like this should work. Let me bring it down just with the arrow keys on the keyboard.
And Jesús, I'm gonna pause you a second because first and foremost, Sam, amazing. When you were mentioning your Photoshop training channel, is actually linking in the chat.
Awesome, thank you so much,
all the
Sam.
tutorials, so everyone can catch up for all the topics that you have mentioned while reworking this image. And also we had a question from Michelle Fournier, which is, what are the PS tools that cannot be used in 16-bit? So I don't know if you want to tackle that now.
There's for example, the filter gallery is probably one of the biggest ones that you're gonna want to use that you can use. I can't remember some of the others off the top of my head, but yeah, for sure the filter gallery. And then there's a couple other like scripts and things like that that wouldn't work with 16-bit. But anyway, with this duplicate layer, what I'm going to do now is simply hold Alt and Windows Option on the Mac to make a black layer mask. Also, I don't know if I mentioned it on Rework It before, but I think I mentioned it on one of the Adobe Lives. What some people do is they just create a layer, which is white, which reveals, and then press Control-I, Command-I on the Mac to invert. I don't recommend doing that because it actually creates a problem in some cases. Let me show you what that problem is. If I unlink the layer after pressing Control-I, Command-I to invert, and I select the Move tool to move the layer mask. Actually, I don't even know how I got there, but let me do it from the beginning. Let me undo everything. Let me just delete this. Create a layer mask. All right, cool. So I created a layer mask and then fill with black is what I was trying to say. And if I fill with black, instead of inverting, what happens at this point is that when I unlink the layer mask and move it, notice now that I have this white here on the bottom right. See how my layer mask is not really, and I'll hold Alt and Windows Option on the Mac to actually see the layer mask. See how in reality what I did is I just filled a black square and that's why I get that result. In a lot of cases, that's not what you want. In a lot of cases, you just want an infinitely black layer mask. So in order to create one is that when you hold Alt and Windows Option on the Mac and click on the layer mask icon, notice now that when I unlink the layer, you can click and drag as much as you want. And it's just an infinitely black layer mask, which is really what I want. I don't want a black box. I want an infinitely black layer mask. So a big difference, which is why I always do it this way as opposed to filling with black as some people do. But anyway, now that I have this layer mask filled with black, it hides everything and I can paint with white. Let me just make my brush much smaller and I can paint with white to hide that effect. And notice that when I do that, the banding is actually still there. And I'm still looking at the solar curve and I can keep adjusting the solar curve and you'll notice that I don't get those blotches anymore. See that? Those blotches are not there. So it'll print much better, the image looks much better, and this is why he created the solar curve to catch those imperfections, but I don't think he caught it. I think he just created it because, you know, it's like what people tell you to do online, create a solar curve. But if you create one, then you should use it. To me, that was like a fairly easy to catch imperfection. There it is. This is what he did there. You can see that imperfection there that we were able to fix really, really easily. Are there any questions?
Leigh Jackson is saying, I always just inverted it and would have that, and I would have had that problem. So yes, because of course you want to make sure that you use the entire space and you're not constrained within the mask.
Yeah, and then to be fair to Leah, you can actually invert it and you'll get the same result. The problem is when you fill. The problem with inverting though is if you have a selection, you'll just be inverting that selection. So if you have like a selection that covers the entire canvas and you invert, you're only going to invert the canvas. So to be sure that you fill the mask with black, you know, infinitely, you need to hold Alt and Windows Option on the Mac, and then that way you'll be sure that the mask is completely black all around, not just in any selection or any specific area. But invert, so technically if you create a mask and then click on the invert button, you get the same result, but that's more steps.
So we also had a couple comments from Ferry that I believe that it was talking about the moon. Is it just me or the cutout looks too sharp? I wonder how to soften it too. I think he was talking about the moon actually.
Yeah, that's what we're gonna work on next. The moon. Let me just enable.
And it was asking maybe add some fog or haze.
Yeah, let me just add enable the layers and we'll work on the moon.
Also, Michelle, can we avoid having bandwidth when working on 8 bits? To avoid bandwidth, I work in 16-bit.
Oh, bandwidth? I think they mean banding, but...
Sorry, I was just reading.
Yeah.
Banding, yeah. I work in 16 bits, then export in 8 bits, so there is no more.
I don't know what you mean by bandwidth, but I'm assuming you mean banding. Is that what you mean, Michelle? Yeah, you can definitely... well, it depends on what you're doing. There's a lot of... depending on the trend, I mean, I don't want to make a blanket statement here, but if for example, if you're working on a composite like this one and you're getting banding, one of the ways of removing or distorting banding or making banding less obvious is to like add a little bit of noise, and that breaks up the banding. But you know, it just depends. Like I probably wouldn't recommend that if you were doing like a gradient for like a UI or something like that. So the other thing was about, and I don't know. Oh yeah, this moon doesn't need to be on. The next thing I wanted to discuss here that they could have worked on is, you know, they spent a lot of time creating the halos and highlights and all of this, but then I felt like he kind of just forgot about the water. You know, he kind of just did like a brightening effect there, and if I'm not mistaken, he used a curves adjustment layer for that. I just gotta find the right one. This one here, yeah, this one here. It looks like all he did is just like, I'm just gonna brighten this up, and then, you know, just drag it up, and boom, I have my highlight. And highlights on, you know, I guess you can get away with it, but what I would have done instead is created a new layer and also clip to the layer below and just paint with white. And you guys have seen me use this technique before, and it's okay if I'm getting the top part. It really doesn't matter at this point. I'm just painting with white. Let me just cut the top part off. Let me go find the mask that is containing it. There it is. I'll hold Control on Windows, Command on the Mac, click to load the top part. And then with this highlight I just created, I'm going to hit the backspace key on Windows, delete key on the Mac to delete the pixels on top. And I could have also created a layer mask and more non-destructively. That's probably the better way to do it in case I change my mind. But in this case, as I'm teaching, I didn't have to worry about that. But anyway, with the highlight on the water, you can now double click on the side to bring up the layer style window, and you can change the blending mode to color dodge, and make sure that you uncheck transparency shapes layers to get that result there. And actually, we were just talking about my website, so I'm just going to do a shameless plug here.
Before you plug, I just want to say hi to Paco that is in the chat. We miss you. How's it going? Happy New Year. Paco, we wish we were in the studio. We cannot wait for those times to come back.
You should get Paco a ticket to fly down here so he can run tech for us here.
Do you want to run tech in Manchester? We would love to have you here. We need you. Yeah. We're still here with our 1,000 cables around the room. So nice to see you, Paco. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yep. And I'm going to scroll down on my website, photoshoptrainingchannel.com, and at the very bottom there's a link called Blending Modes Explained, the complete guide of Photoshop blending modes. And in here I have a link that is called, where is it? Right here, transparency shapes layers checkbox. And this is what I'm talking about now. If you really want to read more about what's going on, I wrote like this whole thing here about how each blending mode works, including the stuff that I'm talking about now. But anyway, so with these blending modes, these 8 blending modes that I have here, color burn, linear burn, color dodge, linear dodge, vivid light, linear light, hard mix, and difference, with those blending modes, you get a different result if you uncheck this box, transparency shapes layers. See that? And in the case of color dodge, it helps you create this highlight effect, and you can use the fill, not the opacity, the fill. It's labeled fill opacity here, but it's labeled as just fill here. And this fill button allows you to reduce the intensity of this highlight effect that we just created. See that? And if you zoom in, that looks much more like a highlight than what we had before. So that was before, and this is after. So again, you can spend more time making this into a much nicer highlight by, you know, I don't know, painting in different areas in different ways and controlling the opacity, or fill, I should say, so that you can get the right intensity to that highlight there on the water. Cool. And I do agree that the moon is a bit too sharp. I think Ferry in the comments was talking about that. Let me see where the moon is. Is this the one that he's using? Yeah. So what I would do in this case is go into filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and obviously that's too much. You can blur it accordingly so it doesn't look so cut and paste, as they were saying. So maybe the only thing in focus is the hot air balloon here, which is probably what we want in focus anyway. And of course, adjust it, blur it any way that you want, whatever looks good to your eye. Cool. And also, I also agree. I was gonna say, see, because Ferry's mentioning in the chat that the moon should also reflect in the water, and I agree. And actually, I was noticing that they had a layer here called moon reflection, but I guess they just forgot about it, or I don't know why they label it in red. As you can see, it's labeled in red, so maybe they just didn't know what to do. But if I were to do this, I probably would just maybe give it, you know what, just to make it easier on me, I'm just gonna convert it into a smart object. And I'll press Control T, Command T to transform, and then maybe I'll give it a little bit of perspective. I don't know. And maybe, oops, maybe bring this in and bring this out. Oh my God, it's totally not working for me right now. But I think you guys get the idea. Anyway, just try to give it a little bit of perspective, not too much. And then just blend it with the layers below using Blend If. So with the underlying layers, you can just blend it in. And actually, we would need to also blur the moon on here because the moon is sharp. So let me just blur it. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur, like so. Now there's two ways that you can actually make the moon seem like it, like there's like ripples in the water. I'll do overlay, but you can use another blending mode. I was saying that there's other ways in which you can make it seem like there's ripples in the water. Like you could use a displacement map, but that would require me to create a black and white Photoshop file with the ripples, save it, and then use that for my displacement map. That's too much work for now. So I think I'm just gonna go into filter, distort, and I will use wave, and it creates this wave looking effect. And I'll just try to like make it seem like it's a wave somehow, some way. But actually, at this point, I think it might have been better just to save the file that I was referring to that I didn't want to save. I think the scale was up too high. But anyway, I think you get the idea that you can create this wavy feature. There you go. It's wavy. But you could have done that, and yeah, I think you got it there, Ferry. The wave filter. And you know what? Just since I mentioned it, in case you don't know what I'm talking about, what I was talking about before is you can take a file like this one, and let me just copy, merge, file, new, create, and I'm gonna make this into a displacement map. And all I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna save it on my computer, and I'm just gonna create a new folder so I can find it later called Adobe Live. Or should have called it rework it, but anyway, this one is a displacement map. Displacement map. I can close it. Oh, it's a 16-bit. Let me change it to 8-bit. 8-bit, close it, save it. And now, when I go back into my moon here, let me find it. Where is it? Is the one that has a red label, I think, unless I changed it. Oh yeah, it looks like I changed it to green somehow. But anyway. What I'll do now is I'll just, yeah, here we are. This is the one. I'm going to go into filter, distort, displace, and I'll press OK. And I'm just going to select that displacement map and press OK. And Photoshop will distort it. I don't know if you could tell, but it's matching now the little bumps and grooves of that. And then just to do it again, I can double click on displace here and maybe change it to like 40 just to make it more obvious. And press OK, select the same displacement map, and there you go. You can kind of see now how it's following the edges there. And of course, it doesn't match this area here, so I would need to fix that, but that's how you would use a displacement map. The displacement map tries to contour to the edges of the image that you saved.
Fantastic, and thank you so much, Jesus, for jumping back into Photoshop after these holidays. It's just like a little bit of refreshing. I saw before Frank was saying that he grabbed 5 minutes to link back with the Photoshop crew here. That's fantastic, led of course by Jesus, but everyone here in chat.
I agree with you, Frank. They really do need to improve the wave filter preview. It'd be a lot of the older filters that were there, like, because most of these filters, if you really think about it, except for the newer filters that are new in this release of Photoshop, most of these filters have been here for 10 plus years. I would say that maybe 80% of them have been there for 15, 20 years, and they haven't been improved much. One of the things that I always complain about is that there's a lot of hidden. Let me just show one last thing. Kladi, sorry about that.
Oh, we got another question as well, so you got two things.
One of the things that I complain about is, for example, with the filter menu, if you go into, where are we at? Render, and select lens flare. This is one of the oldest filters in Photoshop, and it has a secret menu that nobody knows about. If you hold Alt on Windows Option on the Mac and click, there's this precise center window that comes up, and you can input the X and Y coordinates so that this little thing here ends up exactly where you want it. So I've always said, why can't they just put those input boxes here so they're easier to see? Or maybe just a button that,
below.
When you click on the button, this thing comes up. But unless you know the secret handshake, you can't get in, which I think is weird. But the point is that you can use
unless you're part of the Adobe Banana Crew.
Unless you're part of the ABC Adobe Banana Crew. That's right, Sean. But the point is that you can use the X and Y coordinates. So there's a lot of really old filters in here that I felt haven't been updated in a while, but I do agree with that some of these do need a nice little update. In case you don't know how to find the X and Y coordinates of an image, all you need to do is go into your info panel. And from your info panel, when you're hovering over an image, see how I'm hovering over the image? The X and Y coordinates right here, they show up. So just remember those numbers. And then put
you're pointing out. He's pointing out.
Oh yeah, I'm pointing on this, like you can see. Just look at these numbers inside this window, the X and Y coordinates, and then input them into the filter, and then the lens flare will appear exactly in that pixel.
Sus, I think it's important to take very question because it's pretty much something that doesn't come up very often. So talking about the displacement map, can you explain about horizontal scale and vertical scale?
Yeah, and actually I can do you one better, Ferry. So basically horizontal and vertical scales, basically how much you're scaling or pushing out the pixels. Like, so in other words, like the intensity of the filter. But if you really want to know how that filter works, I did a tutorial a really long time ago. So let me see.
You were still in your white spaceship.
Yeah, Photoshop. Yeah, training channel and then displacement map. Displacement map. It's really. Oh, there you go. It's 4 years old. And I talk all about how that filter works. And I actually start the video by showing you like the science behind that filter and how everything works. So if you really want to take a deep dive into how to use that filter, then check out this video.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jesús. And it's now time to jump into Illustrator. So
awesome.
I'm going to go back into the main landing. Actually, before we jump in Illustrator, I'm going to show Achilles, because we did mention his Behance page, but I also received a message from him on Instagram saying, can you please also showcase our Instagram since I'm getting featured? And of course, we would love to do that. So hopefully my screen is going to come up. Here it is. Beautiful. And before following up with Illustrator, which I'm going to have to resize in just a second. Here it is. I'm going to go back into the web browser and showcase Achilles, which is the person that, and I'm sorry if I don't pronounce your name right, but is the amazing artist that has produced the composite that you were working on. So make sure to go and give him a follow and check out all his work. You can see many different composites.
And hopefully you can do the update.
Yes, Achilles, if you are watching this, make sure to tag either Jesús or me, or share with us the update. We would love to see if you tackle the rework it. Fantastic. And look at our other amazing works. He's been very, very creative. We always get a lot of inspiration to see other people work. Oh, I think that was a submission as well. I definitely recognize it.
Awesome.
Fantastic work. So here we are. So make sure to go and check out his profile. And thank you so much for submitting. I know, some people are shy. I have questions about submitting the work, and I think that they're we're all learning. We're all learning. I'm definitely learning English. That's for sure. But
we're all learning something.
We're all learning something constantly. And the beauty, I was doing some Instagram questions, and people were asking, share something that you learned. And the thing that I learned is that fail fast and fail a lot, because the more you fail, the more you learn new skills, and the more you can succeed and do better. So let's drop the fear of failure. Is absolutely something that we need to improve. And here it's a safe community. Adobe Live, it's a space where we learn. So that's the play. If you don't showcase here your work, how do you solve your problem? How do you improve? So we're here to work together. And the person that is been selected for Illustrator is actually Maria Deli Giorgi. You might have seen her before streaming with me. We were working a while ago on a logo that got hung. So Maria submitted it for Rework It, and we're gonna be also reworking it. And I can see Malini in the chat. Malini, I believe I had you here. If not, we're gonna bring you up in the next screen, because Malini has also submitted her Illustrator work, and we're probably gonna work on it because the time I can see is ticking, either today or tomorrow. I think since we're here live, I will just deliver a message live to Malini regarding the typeface. I think that the font was missing. So whenever you send this file, you can send. I'm gonna just share real quick for those of you who have just tuned in right now. You can head into Rework It. So it's iamkladi.com/reworkit. You can also find it on the home page, but that's a dedicated page for this segment. And from the submit your design button, all you have to do is to click and then add your email, upload your files. In here, you can just add a JPEG. You don't necessarily need to add your working file. And when you get selected, you will get an email from me and Jesús asking for your Illustrator Photoshop file that you can share with us in a Dropbox file, or probably we should do a Dropbox uploader. That's also something that it can work directly. But anyway, all you gotta do is to upload your file here, your name, of course, your Behance profile, so we can give you a shout out, which app have you used, and if you have a specific question, and that's how you submit your work. Now, whenever you then submit, you get selected. Make sure to submit as much as possible in terms of the font you use, the picture you use. The more we have, the more we'll be able to help you solve the problem of offer a different graphic solution for your work. You can also head on my Instagram, and you'll find it in the bio. There is a little link tree, and there is a link that will take you directly. Let's see if I can find it here. It will take you directly to Rework It. Here it is. So submit your work to Rework It on Adobe Live. Here it is. So in this way, you'll be able to submit the work and to have it featured. But let's have a look at Maria. Go ahead and give it a follow. Maria is an amazing illustrator and designer. She mainly focuses on print design. She has done some projects which are definitely worth having a look. I don't think if it was, I'm not sure if it was this one or this calendar here. Maria was based in Greece, and she has moved in the UK about 5 years ago, and she got selected from the MoMA to basically they bought copies of this amazing calendar, which is a scratching calendar, and she produces those amazing prints that are very, very exciting. She's done another one that was a See in the Dark, so he had a neon ink, which I think is super, super exciting. So she really experiments with print design. But as I said, today she submitted a work to rework in Adobe Illustrator. So I'm gonna start by having a look at this logo. What are the things that maybe jump in my eye and to my eye? As I say, I'm here learning English. I've been speaking with my family during these holidays, so it's been Italian for me. I need to get back on speaking English right now. I also can see General cannot be saying the greatest teacher failure is, said my master Yoda. Yes, I completely agree. Sean, I think is the same. Fail fast and often. Yes, fail faster to succeed better. Fantastic. I love that we are all aligned in this path of becoming a better version of ourselves with all our skills. Right. So let's zoom in into the logo that Maria has shared with us. And first thing that really, really jumps in my eye is the fact that all these little, I don't know if you can see, I'm going to really try to zoom in. The illustration looks really broken up. So there are different ways that you can solve this problem. This is something that I wouldn't consider a final design. It could be a stage of design. It could be in a proposal stage. It looked like it's either a graphic downloaded from the internet that it wasn't refined, or maybe just a photo that is being then traced. And then, of course, when you trace an image, as much as a very quick fix in order to transform any sketch into a vector, is not necessarily giving you all the best and accurate details of an image. So I think that's what happened here. But let me go and show you certain different ways in which you can approach. One of them can be to try to fix this image. Now, I'm just going to show you a little bit. I'm not going to go ahead and fix this entire illustration because, as you can see, it's got a lot of swirl and a lot of different parts. The first thing that I will do is to right-click on the image, and we can find these here on the right. We can see that if we right click on the image, we can find simplify, and from the simplify you can reduce the point or put more anchor points. So probably, let's see why we're not showing the anchor points here. Here we are. So that's probably a better view of the anchor points. All I had to do is to click on the letter A, or the white arrow, which is right here at the top left of the working space, and from here all you have to do is to select control again, or right click and then click into the image and make sure that you select simplify. And that's a way in which you can achieve real quick simplification of your path. Also, it's usually very neat to use less point as possible, so your design is just simply to transform. Is also very light in terms of design weight, because as you can see, the simplify tool is just literally 2 clicks has completely simplified the points. And the vector points, I don't know if maybe you know or don't know, depending if you are starting in Illustrator, vector points are scalable. So they are a mathematical function that you can see. So the less mathematical function we give Illustrator to perform, of course, the faster the file and your machine is also gonna perform. But this wasn't necessarily the best fix. We can see that we still have a lot of jagged edges, and we probably need to refine a little bit more. In order to do so, we can access a tool that I remember I learned while I was a student. And I think I was in Leeds doing a portfolio surgery, refined the actual path. I was mind blown, because I'm talking about the smooth tool. Let me know in the chat if you have used the smooth tool before. And all you have to do is to click and hold on the 3 dots in order to edit your toolbar, and then go ahead and select the flyout menu and make sure that you select advanced. And from there, you'll be able to display an enriched version of your toolbar that has more tools than the basic ones. And we really want to try and dig into those. Then click and hold on the sharper tool in order to access the hidden tools. And here you can find the smooth tool, which is the fantastic friend that I was talking to you about. So make sure that you select your path, then select the smooth tool, and look what happens. If you just click and drag over your path, it automatically smooth the path. Can you see? I'm just going to undo, so you see how this edge was all jagged, and would have taken us time to click on the anchor point, fix all the handles. With the smoother tool, all we have to do is to click and drag on the path, or simply click once on the path, and we'll have these beautiful curves that are back. So that's the reason why I said I'm not going to go ahead and do that for the entire shape, the entire path, because there is a lot going on here. But that's definitely, look at already the difference. You can see right away which is the path that we touched, and how much, even if it's not perfect, although we got rid of all these spikes, so it's much smoother, and the curves are much neater as well. So that's an option. Another option will be also to find something similar, maybe on Adobe Stock, to save time. So that could be used as something that we present to our clients. So maybe we just find something on a print design, or we have a sketch, and then we just live trace it. But then if the design gets approved and the style gets approved, we can move forward into a more detailed design, which will be our final design. So in order to do so, first and foremost, we need to understand which is the style. I will call this one a sort of vintage ornament, just in order to have some keywords that you can use while you search for vector professional files ready to use. then in order to search the files, all you have to do is to go under Window and select your libraries, and then click on Libraries to bring up the CC Libraries panel. You can use any library that you already created, or you can click on the plus icon to create a new library. I'm gonna call this one Rework It, and then Maria, so I know that we're working on Maria's file. And then you can click on the down pointing arrow to make sure that you are searching from Adobe stock. And I'm gonna zoom in here because I have very often messages saying, Claudia, look for images, but it doesn't, Adobe stock doesn't come up. Well, that's because usually when you're working on a library, this search from is set on current library. So it's literally, you're doing a research within your library, and if there is nothing there, nothing is gonna display. So make sure to click on the down pointing arrow and select Adobe stock. And then here you can find your keywords, in this case vintage ornament, and I'm gonna zoom out. And also I suggest to click and drag on your library to display a larger version of these images, so you can see we have so many wonderful ornaments, and we can perhaps play with something. Click on the plus icon in order to add it to your library, and then you can double click on them to open them, or simply click and drag it into your work. Here it is. Sorry, I opened it twice. And as you can see, this one looks very, very refined, and maybe we can use different pieces to create something a little bit more unique, which is something that I advise, although there are so many beautiful pieces, depending on how much time you have, how much unique you want your design to to result at the end. I will suggest, yes, to use those amazing vectors. At the moment, this is a JPEG. I'm going to show you real quick. If I click on the little cart icon, is going to use one of my credit in Adobe stock, and it will license the vector. And by doing so, we're actually going to be able to use the actual vector file. Here it is. Look how beautiful and neat those curves are. So in this case, we can start to copy and then paste these vectors inside our original file that Maria has provided us with. And I'm going to close the photo, which was the preview. Fantastic. Let me go back here and paste it. So of course, resize it by holding the shift key and dragging one corner of the bounding box to make sure that we resize it by keeping the proportion. And we can sort of start to work on the same design that Maria has created here. Press the I in order to activate the eyedropper tool and click on any color that you wish to lift for your appearance. Make sure that you select the entire image, press I, and click on another color to make sure that you change your illustration in the same color that your project was used. And again, you can create duplicate by pressing Command C and Command F, and then head to your properties panel and start to flip your design vertically. And that's just, of course, the beginning. You can go ahead and start to use any of these wonderful illustrations and start to compose these new vector form.
And Claudia, there's questions in the chat about how to look for free Adobe stock assets. Do you want to show them how to do that?
Yes, absolutely. So in order to look for free assets, I would suggest to go directly into stock.adobe.com, and as soon as we land on the stock landing page, under this drop-down menu, you'll be able to select free. And under free, you can then perform your research. Yeah, so I'm just gonna select Halloween, and in here you will see right away all the assets that are free to use. So again, just make sure that you select first free, which is the type of stock that you want, and then whatever is the keyword.
And then on the left-hand side, you can select if you want free videos or free templates or images or whatever you're looking for.
Of course, as per any wonderful filter inside any app, inside the libraries, or inside the website, the main Adobe Stock website, you will be able to narrow down your research. So I wanted to show you something real quick. Maybe I have a minute. Two things, 2 minutes. So one thing I wanted to show you is, especially when you're doing with chocolate or packaging or something that is vintagey, I would strongly suggest to start to use texture. You can use a copper texture or maybe a golden texture. You can also find them on Adobe Stock. So I'm just gonna use gold for now. Gold, here it is. And then click and drag to bring it in. I'm not gonna license it in this case simply because I'm just using it for as an example. But if you click here and then click on any image and then bring it inside, and it has to be on top of your texture. So Command Shift right bracket or Control Shift right bracket if you're on a window machine. Make sure that this is a group, so Command G to group all your vector file, then place it or whatever is the right area that you want to mask it with. Click and drag to select both the vector and the image that sits below, and press Command 7 to make sure to create a mask. So it looks like we probably have to go and create a compound path to make it. If sometimes the image doesn't show, is because you really want to make sure that Illustrator really wants to make sure that all the vector that you're masking are a single shape, and this shape looks a little bit intricate here. Probably here it is. So all I did was using a compound path. So I select my object, went under Object, Compound Path, and Make. That allow us to treat all the vector as a single shape, and then it worked as a mask. So as you can see, we have the gold coming through, and that can be part of our design. So perhaps we can just use that beautiful turquoise tile color as a background. And as you can see, the gold, let me see if I can literally bring this behind the gold. If we present packaging, is a little bit neater to have something that already start to bring some print finishing. So it's also very inspiring to see where the logo can go through. And before we say goodbye, I wanted to show you just one quick trick. Today there is a busy day. We are starting the day here. I think after us there is the amazing Voodoo Val with the Photoshop creative challenge, and during the day there is also the Illustrator creative challenge. If you're doing anything like a chocolate package or any sort of packaging, go ahead and check out the Illustrator creative challenge that I've done a little while ago. You can find many challenges right now. Andrew Ocrado is running an amazing challenge, but if you go down here in the past challenges, 9 to 27 on November, at the very end you find a packaging set which actually has a chocolate packaging that you can use with this gold technique that I've just used, and maybe present your file for your client or for your a creative director, just to show a different way in which you can really lift your brand when it's mocked up. But it looks like it's time to go. Asus is
already
pretty much, yes. Unfortunately, it's time to say goodbye. I'm gonna give it a shout out to Maria one more time. Make sure to go ahead and give her a follow on Behance. Is Maria Deli Giorgi. Here it is, that's her profile. And one more time, if you want to submit the work, and we're live back tomorrow at the same time, make sure to head on iamkladi.com/reworkit, click on submit your design and fill in the form so we can select you for our next stream, which is tomorrow, and then I believe the week after.
The week after, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Sean, Steve, RB. Thank
you
Asus.
so much, everybody. Thank you, Kladi. Don't forget, iamkladi.com/reworkit. Submit your Illustrator, InDesign, and Photoshop files.
Bye, everybody. Thank you so
Bye.
much.